So, good evening, everyone. So, in the last 3 sessions, these are the concepts that I covered, guys. So first I gave a trailer introduction and some computer basics. We discussed some computer basics, and then software development lifecycle and testing lifecycle is covered, and performance testing is covered at a high level. And in last session, that is Friday session, I explained what is performance testing and what are the goals of performance testing, right? So moving forward, let me explain what are the different types of performance testing. And we'll have one quick assessment as soon as that is completed, guys. Okay. And we have I shared all the recorded sessions, guys, in the WhatsApp group. All right. So those who missed the previous sessions, please go through them. Okay.
Sir, like I joined the group today, so maybe I have missed the links for the previous session recordings. Can I get the recording session second?
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
I'll share the playlist URL that will contain all the recorded sessions.
Yeah, sure.
Please remember, like only public demo sessions will be uploaded as public videos. Okay. Once we start the actual tool, like I will not be uploading as public videos. I'll be sharing as private videos.
Okay.
I'm sharing that in the WhatsApp group.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So for every batch, we have one WhatsApp group, right? I'm sharing that in your WhatsApp group, guys. Now in this session, I'm going to explain, so what are the different types of performance testing, and I'll give a high level overview first, and then we will discuss in detail. And then we will have, if time permits, like we will have a quick assessment, guys. So I'll show you some graphs and you have to identify what type of test that graph represents. Okay. Yeah. These are the different types of performance testing. So I am using this logo as my WhatsApp group photo, right? Group DP pic, right? Yeah. Now observe here. So these are the different types of performance testing. The first type of performance testing is load testing. So load testing is something which we do with expected or normal user load for 1 to 2 hours. Let's say if you want to do load testing for an application. So we do load testing with the expected or normal user load. We already discussed what is the normal user load or what is meant by target user load, isn't it? So if we do load test for 1 to 2 hours, that is called as load testing. And the next type of testing is soak or endurance testing. So basically these are long duration tests. And the duration is defined by the business hours of the application. We'll discuss in detail what is meant by business hours and all. So the second type of testing is soak or endurance test, which is a long duration test. Okay. The duration is defined by number of business hours of the application. This is endurance testing. Clear? The next type of testing is stress testing. So stress testing is something which we do with more than normal load on the application. More than normal load on the application. So if you want to give some example, right? If you have any travel application during, you will have more than expected load on during festival days or vacation, right? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Right. So for those kind of applications, like a travel application or for a e-commerce applications like Flipkart or Amazon, right? So they will have more number of users whenever there is a sale and all, right? Isn't it? So for those kind of applications, we have to do so. Apart from load test and soak test, we have to do stress testing also. Okay. And the reason why I have highlighted this load testing and soak testing is these are the commonly done types of testing, commonly performed types of testing for any application. The first two, load testing and soak testing, are commonly done test for any type, any kind of application. So apart from, along with these, some applications require different types of testing, right? So among these, stress testing and spike testing would come in the first place. So what is the next type of testing? I already explained what is stress testing, right? Stress testing is something which you do with more than normal load on the application. And spike testing is something which we do for these kind of scenarios or these kind of applications. For example, for IRCTC, whenever the Tatkal window opens, right, we will have a big spike in the user load, right? There will be thousands of users who will be trying to access the application at same point of time. Yes or no?
Yes.
As soon as the Tatkal window opens, right?
Yeah.
So Tatkal window opens 2 times a day, right? At 10 o'clock for AC class and 11 o'clock for sleeper class. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Right. So when, as soon as the Tatkal window opens, there will be a sudden surge in the user load, right? There will be thousands of users or lakhs of users who will be trying to access the application. Yes or no? For a
Yes.
few minutes,
Yes.
isn't it? So for those kind of applications, we have to do this spike testing. In the same way, if we take some examples like e-commerce applications like Flipkart or Amazon. So whenever there is a sale, there will be a sudden surge in the user load, right? So what is the general meaning of spike?
Only high.
Sudden
A
hike.
sudden rise, a sudden surge, right? A sudden surge or a sudden
Yes.
a sudden increase, right? That is called as a spike, right? So for these kind of applications, we have to do spike testing also along with load testing and soak testing, right? The other types of testing are volume testing and scalability testing, right? And failover testing and capacity testing. So we'll discuss those in detail. However, these are the important types of testing. Yes, load testing comes first, and load testing is something which we do with expected or normal user load for 1 to 2 hours. Soak testing, and the next type of testing is soak or endurance test, which is a long duration test. See, what is the meaning of general meaning of endurance? Endurance means durable, right? More duration, isn't it?
Yes.
So these long duration tests are called as soak or endurance test. Next type of testing that some applications require is stress testing and spike testing. Few applications require this volume testing, scalability testing as well. Okay. And failure testing and capacity testing are few more performance testings. I'll explain each one of them in detail. Right. So shall we move to the next slide? I will explain this in detail, like what is volume testing. Okay. Let's discuss. So volume testing is something which we do with expected load and huge volume of data in the database. That is called as volume testing. And in which scenario we do this volume testing and all, I'll explain in the coming up sessions. And the scalability testing means testing an application to verify how much it can scale. How much it can scale means what is the maximum user load that it can support, right? Or how much the scalable the application is. So to verify that, we do something called scalability testing. This is testing an application for future user load. Okay. So if I want to give some numbers, right? So Facebook has like 20 million users approximately now. And there are projections that the user load, future user load means in 1 or 2 years, the user load increases to 30 million, right? And now if you are testing Facebook application with 30 million users, right? So if you want to do scalability testing, right? So we have to test with that 30,000, that as per the projection, as per the projected future load. Is it clear, guys? What is scalability testing?
So like how can we predict that?
What is that?
How can we predict that, like how many users are gonna be
So
there?
there will be separate team called business analyst team. So it's their job to predict or to get those projections.
Okay.
Okay. And the next type of few more performance PT test types are failover testing and capacity testing. Okay. So 1 second. Let me hide this meeting controls. So few more PT test types are failover testing and capacity testing. So failover testing and capacity testing, I'll explain that in detail. First, let's understand one by one from the beginning. Okay. Yeah. So the first and foremost type of performance testing is load testing, right? So load testing, as I said, like we do load testing by simulating the current user load on the application. So we get what is the current user load on the application, and we do this load testing with that current user load or normal user load. Okay, and the duration of load test will be generally 1 to 2 hours. It will be generally 1 to 2 hours. And load testing ensures that, so what is the objective of doing load testing? So it is to ensure that the application is stable and can handle the expected peak load. Okay, it is to ensure that the application is stable. Whatever application we are testing, that is stable with expected user load when there is normal load on the application, right? So this is the first and foremost type of load testing. And it is a mandatory test that will be done prior to any other performance test type. Okay, it is a mandatory test that will be done prior to any other performance test type. Now the next type of testing is SOAK or endurance test. As I said, like endurance means durability, more durable, right? So our long duration tests are technically called as SOAK or endurance test, right? And this endurance test is conducted for longer durations based on business hours of the application. And those business hours can be 4 hours or 8 hours or 16 hours, 1 day or 3 days, and so on. So let's understand what is meant by business hours of the application now. Okay. So let's say if we take some website examples like Flipkart or Amazon, let's say, if we consider these examples like Flipkart or Amazon, right? So most of the users use those applications, let's say from 8 a.m. to like 10 p.m. in the night, right? And now what are the business hours for these kind of applications, guys? 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. If you take this time window, right? So 4 hours plus 10 hours, 14 hours. So 14 hours, there will be more number of users on e-commerce application like Amazon or Flipkart. Clear, guys?
Yeah.
Right. If you take some other examples like so same is the case with banking applications and all this. So however, if there is some commercial tax department website, okay, and their working hours are their they accept any transactions for a limited, let's say limited time frame, for a limited time frame, let's say from morning 10 to evening 4, right? So now the business hours of the applications will be 10 to 4 means 4 hours, 2 hours in the morning and then 4 hours in the afternoon, right? Approximately 6 hours. 6 hours is the business hours of that application. Clear, guys? Clear, guys? Is everyone clear what is meant by business hours of the application?
Yeah, working hours. Working hours.
Working hours, right? So based on the business hours or working hours of the application, business hours of the application, we decide like how much time we have to run that. We have to run a SOAP test. And if you observe here, I mentioned 1 day or 3 days. So when is it possible? So let me give our 16 hours. Let's say when is this 16 hours or 18 hours? Business hours is possible. So if we take some, wholesale banking. So for example, for instance, I worked for Bank of America, one of the projects for Bank of America, right? So it's basically a wholesale bank, right? And that application is used by across countries. That particular application is used by people from across the countries. Okay, it's around like some 40 to 50 countries use that application, right? So in that case, we cannot limit. So as soon as the morning time of our business hours or working hours in one country are closing, right? The working hours in another country may start, right?
Yes, correct.
When it is used by, when we have any such application which is used by multiple countries, people from multiple regions, isn't it? So in that case, we have to do like, we may need to do SOCAR endurance testing for 18 hours or 1 day or 3 days and so on, right? So basically, for now, remember that this is a long duration test depending on the business hours of the application. Clear, guys?
Yeah.
And the main objective of this, yes, I muted everyone. Please, if you have any queries, please unmute, guys. Otherwise, please be on mute. There is some background noise from few participants. Okay, and the main objective of this SOCAR endurance test is to identify memory leaks or connection leaks. So we will understand what is meant by a memory leak and a connection leak in the coming up sessions. Okay. So each test, but please understand that like each test has a different purpose or different objective. There is some different objective to do different types of testing, right? And next type of testing is, as we discussed, stress test. So stress test is something which we do by gradual increase of user load until the application breaks. So this is to find out the maximum user load capacity of the application. Okay. So someone is asking like which tool will be used for performance testing. So there are multiple tools. There are around 30 to 40 tools for performance testing. So out of which major tools are load runner and JMeter nowadays. Right. So we can use, there are a lot of multiple tools for performance testing, but major tools in the market are load runner and JMeter. And then comes Neoload. And then comes like WebLoad, SILPerformer, and all those. So I'll show you the list of performance test tools. Okay. So, please remind me before we end the session for today. I'll show you what are the different tools in the performance testing tools in the market. So in our training, which tool are we going to use? So I am covering load runner and JMeter, both the major tools in the market. Okay. Now, the next type, the main purpose of stress testing is to identify an application's breaking point. Breaking point means to identify what is the maximum load that an application can support before it breaks down. Before it breaks down means before it starts throwing errors, or before high response times, increase very high, right? So the main purpose of stress testing is to identify an application's breaking point. Clear, guys? And so when we say that breaking point is attained is once the response times and error count increases, then we can determine that the breaking point is attained. Clear, guys? So the objective of doing stress testing is to identify an application's breaking point. What is meant by breaking point? So what is the maximum load that an application can support before response times and error count increases? Is it clear, guys? What is this stress testing?
Yes.
Suddenly the getting the load on the application, correct? Like
Can you repeat that, please?
means application getting suddenly stressed, like a big builder. So there is a lots of a load going on that application. Like suddenly there is a I meant to say that there is a
No,
offers like that.
no. This is not about sudden increase in the user load. This is a gradual increase of user load. Please observe the difference. This is gradual increase of user load. If you want to simulate a sudden surge in the user load, that type of testing is called as a spike testing. Okay, that is the next one. That is the next type of performance testing. The next type of testing is next type of performance testing is spike testing. So spike testing is done by sudden increase in user load beyond expected load for shorter durations. Best example that I can give for this is IRCTC application, right? So there will be, see, let's say if there will be like normal user load is 1 to 2 lakhs, let's say for IRCTC. But during Tatkal, right, so there may be more load than expected load, right? I mean, there will be sudden increase in the user load, right? As soon as the Tatkal window opens, isn't it? And it will be for shorter duration. So how much time that sudden increase lasts? It will be like, say, as soon as the Tatkal window opens at 10 a.m., right? So there will be a sudden increase in the user load. In 10 or 15 minutes, all the Tatkal quota will be over, isn't it? Yes, sir, no, guys.
Yes, sir.
So after 10-15, there will be normal load again. There may be normal load again. But for the first 10, as soon as the window opens, right, for 10-15 minutes or 20 minutes, there will be a sudden increase in the user load, isn't it? So for those kind of applications, we do this spike testing. And the spike testing can be considered as a subset of stress testing, right? We can consider that as a subset of stress testing. Okay, and we'll discuss this like once we complete the scripting part, right? Once we start text execution, I'll explain more in detail. The next type of testing is called volume testing. Okay, so volume testing is done to verify response times when there is huge volume of data in the database, right? So I'll explain this real-time examples for this one also, and which type of applications require volume testing and all. I'll explain that in the coming up sessions. And it is also referred to as flood testing. Volume testing is also referred to as flood testing. The main objective of doing volume testing is to analyze the system performance by increasing volume of data in the database. Let's understand what is the volume of data in the database. Okay. So let's say you are using some net banking application and you are doing some fund transfers, you are doing some payments, or you are doing some loan payments, or credit card bill payments, utility bill payments, and so on. So for every transaction that you perform, there will be certain records inserted in the database, right?
Yes.
Right. So after few days, right, there will be large volume of data in the database. There will be lakhs of records in the database, yes or no? Right. And now the database performance or the application performance may degrade out when there is large volume of data in the database. The application performance may degrade, yes or no? When there is less volume of data, right, it is easy to search for some data in the database. If you run a search query, it will be faster rather than having huge volume of data, right?
Yeah.
So volume testing is done to analyze the system performance when there is huge volume of data in the database. Okay. And the next type of testing is scalability testing. So scalability testing, I gave some examples already, right? So it is performed to identify if the application is capable to scale up in terms of user load. The best example that I can give with numbers is Facebook example case. Right? So Facebook currently has 20 million users worldwide, and they have, let's say, they have some projections that in the next 1 to 2 years, there will be the user load will increase by 50%. That means 30 million users will start using Facebook.
Nothing but measuring scalability. Correct, sir?
What is that?
Scalability, nothing but measuring.
Measuring the scalability.
Yes.
Scalability means how much is the application capable to scale up.
Capable of.
Means capable of handling that additional load.
Yeah. Correct. Okay.
Okay. The next type of testing is failover testing. So failover testing is, I'll give some example for this. Failover testing. First, let me explain some example for this. Okay. So ignore about the definition, whatever I gave there, but please understand this example. Suppose you have frequent power cuts in your area, right? So and we know, like we want uninterrupted power supply, let's say, because of summer, and there are huge power cuts, and we want uninterrupted power supply. Now what you will arrange, you will go for some power backup, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
right? And let's say assume that you got the you go for a inverter. Let's say you go for an inverter, and the technician has come and installed the inverter, right? So he gave connections to some important points in each room, and so suppose if you want to test that whether like it is working for as expected or not. So will you wait for that power to go off, guys?
No.
So what
No,
do you
no.
normally do? Once you let the technician go, before letting the technician go, what will you do to test that? Or else what does the technician does?
Yeah,
Once the
wait.
station is
I will
completed?
want to test that before anything happens.
Right. So we or he want to test it whether before so before he leaves the place, right? So he or we want to test it, right? And how do we test that case?
Basically, we turn off
Understood,
the
guys? You
switch.
you got you bought a new inverter and you got it installed with the technician, with the help of technician. And what does the technician does? Like before he leaves the place.
There's all the means bulb. Turn off the main switchboard, and after this, the power will move to that inverter load. They should be testing there is a handling properly or not by the inverter,
Right.
like that.
Right. So we switch off the mains power and see whether the appliances are, the connections are working on the backup power or not. Yes or no? Power backup or not? Yes or no?
Yes.
Right. So failure testing is, so we will not wait for the power to go off, right? We will not wait for a power cut, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
In the inverter example, we will not wait for a power cut, right? To test whether, the inverter is working fine or not. We'll switch off the mains power and see whether whatever connections, given to power backup were given, right? All those connections are working or not, isn't it?
Yes.
So in the same way, in software also, like, for every main environment, for every application, for every website or for every mobile app, right? There will be one main environment and one backup environment. Got it? There will be one main environment and there will be one backup environment. So that if main environment goes down, right? Like just like our main power, right? So if the main environment goes down, users should not, you should not face interruptions. So basically they want, they want the application to be accessible throughout the day, right? So what happens is if the main environment is down for some reason, right? The backup environment will be like serving the users. The whole user load will be transferred to a backup environment, and backup environment will be processing the user request, right? So testing this, system's ability to continue day-to-day operations while the processing part is transferred to a backup environment, that is called as failover testing. Is it clear, guys? And how do we do that in software is the same way how does we do in the previous example, inverter example, right? So here what we do is we start the test and then we bring the main environment down, main environment servers down, and see whether the user load is, getting transferred to backup environment or not. We'll check for some time and then we will turn on the main environment back. We turn on all the servers in the main environment, and again the user load should go to the main environment. It should not go to backup environment when the main environment is up and running. Is it clear, guys? And this is called as, this testing is called as failover testing. This is one of the this is part of the performance testing, or this is one of the types of performance testing. Understood or no, guys? What is failover testing?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the next type of yeah, that's it, guys. So hold on 1 second. So apart from this, there is something called capacity testing, which I will explain that, like, of course, capacity testing, scalability testing are almost similar. There is a small difference between them. Okay, so I'll explain that later on. So these are the different types of performance testing, guys. Okay, so what are those, guys? So as you can see in the diagram, so load testing is the first and foremost one, and endurance testing is the next important type of testing. And then apart from this, you have stress testing, spike testing, scalability testing, volume testing, and failover testing, and capacity testing. So these are the different types of performance tests. Now, now the next question is, does all the application, every application requires all these types of testing? No, it depends on the type of the application that we are testing, what kind of application we are testing. So depending on that, we decide like, well, you know, what are the different types of testing we have to do for each application. Is it clear, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Any queries before we move to the next slides? We'll have one quick assessment. So before going to the assessment, do you have any queries, guys?
No.
Not
Okay.
till now.
Okay.
Now let me show some graphs to you. So in interviews, like you know, interviewer may ask you to draw a graph. Actually, please remember that they may ask you to draw a graph for load test and stretch test, spike test, and all this. So I'll show you some graphs, and you have to identify what are the different, you know, what does that graph represents. Okay. So please let me, you know, ask someone from your, you know, from the batch, from your 13 participants that I have today, right? So the first graph, let me show the first graph. So Indra, what type of testing is this?
Like
Yes, what type of testing is it?
spike testing.
I asked Indra. Indra, are you with us? I can't hear you, Indra. Are you speaking?
Yes. Am I audible?
Okay. So this is it.
Hello.
Yes, guys.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
This is a spike testing.
Okay. And shall we move to the next one? Clear, guys. This is spike testing, right? So you have short spikes for certain some smaller duration, right? So observe here. 1 second. So let me explain you something. Yeah. So observe here. You know, if you assume that this is the normal load on the application, right? Let's assume that this is the normal load on the application, and for a shorter time you have some two spikes here, one small spike here and one big spike here, right? So this graph represents a spike testing. Clear, guys? And what is this one? Let's understand what is this one, right? Let's understand what is this part called as. This part is called as, this part of is called as ramp up. Means we are gradually increasing the user load normal load on the application. Okay, that's how, like, in real time it will be, right? All users will not start at once in the morning, right? If you take any example like IRCTC or Redbus or ICICIbank.com or any application, right? So all the users will not start suddenly, right? So gradually they will start, you know, some users start at 6 o'clock, some users start at 7 o'clock and so on. So there will be gradual increase in the user load. And if you assume that this is the expected user load, and you see two spikes over here, right? One small spike here and then a big spike here. Clear, guys? So this graph represents a spike tester. And what type of test is this one? Let me clear this drawing. What type of test is this one?
Okay.
Or what does this graph represents?
Load testing.
Okay.
Load testing.
Right. So we can call that as a load tester, right? So observe here, I have mentioned here as, you know, 1 hour, right? So 1 minute means 1 hour. We already discussed that load testing is something which we do with normal user load, 1 to 2 hours. That's what we discussed, right? Clear, guys? And observe here, you have test time on x-axis and virtual users on y-axis. Now test time means elapsed time on x-axis, right? This horizontal line is called as x-axis. I hope everyone knows that or remember that now at least, right?
Yes.
Horizontal line is called as x-axis. This is called as y-axis, right? And in this graph, test duration is represented on x-axis and virtual user load is represented on y-axis, right? And if you observe here, the duration is mentioned as, The duration is mentioned here as 1 hour, right? 1H means approximately. So tilde symbol represents approximately 1 hour. So this graph best represents a
Load
what is
test.
this?
Load testing.
Load test, right? Now what type of test is this one?
Stress testing.
Stress.
Stress.
Right. So this graph represents a stress test, right? So we already discussed just now what is stress test, guys?
Slowly,
Stress test
gradually,
is something which
Gradually.
gradually increase that.
gradual increase in the user load till the application breaks, right? Till the breaking point is attained. Clear, guys? So we have some ramp up here. 1 second, let me. So we ramped up some users and maintained some steady state. Means there is no change in the user load from here to here, isn't it? Please understand the graph, right? This is y-axis represents the virtual user load on the application. Means user load means what is meant by user load, guys?
How many users
How
are
many
using
users are
the
using the
Using the
application?
application,
Currently
At a
accessing
particular
the-
time.
use it.
Right? And now again we increase the user load, again maintain some steady state. So what are we doing here? We are gradually increasing the user load, isn't it? So this graph represents a stress test. Clear, guys? And we increase the user load till we get the breaking point, till we find out the application's breaking point. Right? Now, is it clear, guys? Shall we move to the next graph?
Yes.
Yes.
What type of test this graph represents?
Endurance
Endurance
test.
testing. Endurance.
Endurance test.
Endurance
Soak
test.
test and this.
As you can see here, 5 hours, like this 5 stands for 5 hours. Okay. And you see here, the same, like test time, elapsed time is represented on x-axis and user load is represented on y-axis. Right? So this graph best represents an endurance test.
I wanted to know about the difference between this one and the load test.
What is that?
I wanted to know about the difference between this one and the load test, the 24th one.
Okay. Load test is something which you do for 1 to 2 hours. So as I said, like each test has a different purpose. First, the first type of testing we have to do is load test. And load test we do with normal user load. Okay. Whereas soak test or endurance test, right? So we will not do with normal user load, but we will do with 75% of the normal user load, but for a longer duration.
Okay.
But for a longer duration. And this duration depends on, see, this 5 hours is not a fixed one, right? So this depends on the business hours of the application.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is the main difference. But load test will be for 1 to 2 hours only normally.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
However, this duration, the soak test, when you consider the soak or endurance test, right? The duration depends on the business hours of the application. It can be 5 hours or 10 hours or 15 hours or 1 day also. Clear? And the objective of doing this endurance testing is to find out memory leaks or connection leaks. I'll explain what is meant by a memory leak and connection leak, once we complete the scripting part. And once we go to the test executions, I'll explain at that time. We will revisit this again. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The next type of, yeah. So what does this graph represent?
Like,
Scalability test.
sorry, scalability.
Scalability test.
Scalability testing. Sorry.
Now observe here on the x-axis, elapsed time is represented, test time is represented, and on y-axis you have data volume, data quantity.
Volume testing.
Volume testing.
Right. So on y-axis, data quantity is represented, right? So this graph represents a volume test. Clear, guys?
Yeah.
So now if someone asks you to draw the graph, you can draw it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Will you share your screen and show me, draw some graphs, guys? Whatever graph I ask now. Using paint or something, can you draw the graph now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Who will go first? I'm stopping my screen share. Right.
And here in the y-axis, we'll have the number of users,
Right.
virtual users maybe. And here we'll give a ramp up, and according to our user load, the sudden spikes will be there.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. So can you drag graph for stress test? Maybe we'll ask someone else. Anyone else?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please go ahead, Madhuri. Madhuri, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'm stopping your screen share. Yeah.
Was that okay, sir? Like my connection maybe got lost.
No, Madhuri will take it. Like Madhuri, I asked Madhuri to show that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, stress test. Right.
Now, Madhuri to try a graph for stress test. Madhuri, can you please repeat that for the recording purpose?
Okay. We'll gradually increase the user load and
So
we'll.
what does x-axis represent? What do we represent on
Yeah.
x-axis and y-axis?
X-axis represents the time and y-axis represent the user virtual user load. And first
Right.
we'll gradually increase the user rate. After some time we'll stable the users and
We'll maintain a
repeat
steady
this
state.
process. Yeah. Until we reach the breakdown point, we'll repeat this process.
Right. Perfect. Thanks, Madhuri. So this is a list of few important and popular performance testing and engineering tools, guys.
Load runner is licensed, then how we will do?
It means like you will have certain, you have to pay something to Micro Focus to use this tool, right? Of course, we have a trial version as well. We can do load test with 50 users with trial version. And Apache JMeter is completely free tool. It's an open source tool. Okay.
Okay, then first you will teach the load runner, right? And after that Apache, or Apache first, load runner second.
No, in this batch, in this particular batch, I am going to cover JMeter first and then load runner.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
I'm passing the recording, guys.